When you think about improving soil, what immediately comes to mind? Compost, tillage? Those are probably two things that come to a lot of people's mind. But aren't there other ways we can do it? Easier ways, maybe more natural ways, ways that the planet's been doing for hundreds of thousands, millions of years? There is, and that's what we're going to be taking on in this episode. Thanks for watching the video today. I'm Diego, and today we're talking soils. When it comes to gardening, one thing I think we love to overdo and overthink, and I am totally guilty of it, and I know you are too, is improving soil. Like, we focus so much on this in the organic gardening space. Maybe too much. Maybe we're not giving nature enough credit. We love to add compost, we love to fertilize, we love to till, we love to mulch, and all those things for sure make soil better, and they for sure can help speed up the natural process. But what about nature? Sometimes can't we just defer to nature and let nature kind of move things along? If you think about how nature improves soil, there's a few main ingredients: plants, microbiology, and water. That's it. Water shows up, plants grow, plants produce exudates, biology lives off those exudates, plants do better, and the virtuous cycle continues. So just putting plants in the ground and adding water can dramatically improve soils. And I know that sounds obvious, but nobody really talks about that. And I don't think we think about that enough. I think our first thought whenever we want to build soils is, what can we do or what can we add? Well, let's go the simplest route. Let's just add water and plants and try and make soil better. What I have here is soil that's been untouched for the past 20 plus years. I know it hasn't been touched because there's been a propane tank sitting here for 20 plus years. I recently had it removed, exposing the soil underneath, and when the propane tank left, I thought, there we go, now I have some more garden space. But look at this soil. This is typical California soil come summer. It's dried out, it turns into concrete, you get big chunks. No doubt there's organic matter in here. There's probably some dormant biology. Well, what's missing from this? There's a few weeds here, but really there's not much life happening in the soil. There's also no water, obviously, by the concrete turned to powder soil that we have right here. So can we plant successfully into this soil just by watering plants and letting the plants work their magic? Don't forget, when you put plants in the ground, they do a lot below surface, not just above surface. We love what they do as gardeners above surface, but let's take a look at what they also do below surface. Within plants, you have a few structures. You have the above ground structures, which help with a lot of things, but in terms of this talk, we're mainly concerned with photosynthesis and respiration. It's taking in CO2. Photosynthesis is happening within the leaves. It's converting that CO2 into sugars, which it's sending down to the roots. The roots are a very key portion of the plants themselves. Why are the roots important? Well, the roots anchor the plant, and they provide a nutrient exchange point within the soil. It's along these roots where nutrients are exchanged between the soil and the plant can thereby get what it needs to perform its growth. The roots are able to absorb food locally, meaning as far as the roots can go, they can absorb nutrients in the soil. But if the root only goes to here, it has no way to access the nutrients here. It needs something to bring it over to the root. When you think about the soil structure, roots themselves have limited mobility. They can only go as far as they can grow, and they branch, but their branching isn't as extensive as something like fungal hyphae, and it's also much larger. The average root size or root hair is around 0.2 millimeters in size. Small by our thoughts, but actually very large when you compare it against fungi. So if roots make up this anchor point, a nutrient exchange point, and they're in the soil where nutrients lie, is that good enough to get all of the nutrients out of the soil? No, it isn't, because you need the soil organisms to unlock some of those nutrients, to bring them to the roots where they can be exchanged in the form of plant available nutrients with the plant for the plant's sugars, which it is providing by photosynthesis. This is where mycorrhizal fungi come in. Mycorrhizal fungi form relationships with about 90% of terrestrial plants. They have 7 times higher absorption versus the roots, meaning they can get a lot more out of the soil than the roots can. They're much smaller. Remember, roots were 0.2 millimeters in diameter. Mycorrhizal fungi are only 0.003 millimeters in diameter. Much smaller, they're much more mobile, they're much faster growing, and they drastically increase the plant's reach. So those mobile roots, which were anchoring the plant and absorbing nutrients locally, now have a go-getter in the soil which can go out and really mine the soil. What is the incentive for them to go out and enter this relationships? Well, photosynthesis comes down. It provides root exudates in the form of simple sugars. It also produces chemical signals and hormones which go out that attract that mycorrhizal fungi. The mycorrhizal fungi use their hyphae in the soil to go out and take nutrients and break them down with enzymes to make them plant available. In exchange for sugars, the plant can get everything that it needs from the soil by partnering with those fungi, from the atmosphere through CO2. If you consider more than 50% of a dry matter of any crop is actually carbon coming from the atmosphere, and with water to help kickstart the process. The bottom line is pretty simple. In a healthy soil, plants have most to all of their required nutrients available. Just add plants and water to the soil, and you have enough to grow soil and grow healthy plants. So next time you're thinking about adding something to your soil, think about putting plants in the soil and getting this pump and symbiotic relationship going instead of just adding the fertilizer to the soil itself. Knowing how the cycle works, knowing about those root exudates, all we're going to be doing to this soil is putting some plants into it, watering them, and letting nature work her magic. So let's get the process started. For planting purposes, I removed all the organic matter and just pushed it to the back. I'm saving it. I'm not getting rid of it. It is valuable. I'm keeping it. One thing I know I could have in this area is gopher pressure. So all of the cucumbers, which is the plants I'll be planting, will get put in these little mini 6-inch gopher baskets. I found these to be very helpful if you have gophers. It is a pain to put every plant into these, but the fact that your plants can live a full life in them outweighs any pain while planting. So I just have to dig a big enough hole to fit this into, and then the plant can go in the ground. Again, what's missing in this? There's no biological activity, and to stimulate that, we need 2 things. We need water and we need plants. Darren Doherty says one thing that I really love: you have to be blue before you're green. So we have to introduce the blue in the form of water, then we bring on the green, and a lot of times that's all it's gonna take to get our soils going. Add a little water and magic happens. It sounds like something on a commercial, and it really is. One thing I always like to do in these new plantings is fill the hole up completely with water just to pre-moisten that soil before I put the plant or any soil back in. So we're just going to keep pouring and pouring and pouring and try and super saturate that soil to reduce transplant shock. Water's been added to the holes and it looks like it's draining through pretty well. What's pretty well? It's not draining like beach sand and it's not going to sit in there for an hour. It's just draining pretty well. One thing that somebody told me once, and I think it's totally true, maybe it's all in our mind and maybe it's not, is soil always looks better when it's wet than when it's dry. I mean, here's an example of this soil, wet. Here's an example of the same soil, dry. Which one would you want to plant into? I think you'd say, I want to plant into this one. I don't like this one. This one looks bad. This one looks good and healthy. The only difference between the two is this is wet, this is dry like powder. So it is the magic of water that can transform things. And while our head is saying, hey, it just looks better, and that's a bit of a surfacey analysis, maybe it's telling us something. It's actually true. Why is it better? Why does it look better? It looks better because this has potential for life in it. Plants can grow in it. Microbiology can function in it. So maybe just intuitively we know darker soils mean wetter soils, mean more organic matter, and that's typically better than drier, powdery soils, which are lacking all of the above. The cucumbers in the ground, they've been watered in, and the process of building soil in place is now started. The idea behind this video isn't to say don't use compost or fertilizer or don't till. All those things are great, they definitely help build soil. The idea here is to get you to remember that nature on her own can do miraculous things. The soil a lot of times has enough minerals and nutrients already in it. There's probably enough biology in there. There's probably enough organic matter in there in most cases, not all cases. And sometimes all you have to do is add water. Fast forward ahead a few weeks later, and this is what we have. The cucumbers look good, color's good, size is good, they're growing. There's not really any apparent struggles right off the bat. Now, they might not be perfect if you're a big-time cucumber grower, but they look pretty good. This is the amazing thing about biology, is it works. You put the plants in, they get that carbon pump going, taking CO2 from the atmosphere, sucking it in, and putting a lot of that carbon into the soil, which feeds the microbes, which builds the soil. We didn't add any amendments here. We didn't add fertilizer to the soil. The plants are just growing, and it's kind of crazy to think about that. Like, oh, the plants just, they happen to grow. We put them in the ground, and look at them. They grew up to be big, healthy plants that just wanted to reproduce. Well, what a shocker. We didn't have to do anything. That's sometimes how I think we think as gardeners. We're too dependent upon us in the system. We're too dependent upon us thinking about what we need to add to the system. And I'm not saying you never need to add compost or fertilizer to the system. You obviously do, especially if you're doing this year after year after year. But I think we add too much to the system, and I don't think we give enough credit to the plants in terms of their role in building soil and getting biology going. So next time you plant something in your garden and you go to add something, well, give a little credit to the plant and maybe give a little less credit to you and that thing that you're putting in the soil, because at the end of the day, this is nature's system. This is how she designed it, and believe it or not, after millions and millions of years, it actually works. Thanks for watching this one. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.